Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, we're going to have one of those kind of meandering, rambling shows. Not really rambling. I want to try to get out of here at a decent clip. But a few subjects kind of crossed my mind today. And I'm going to just kind of relay those idle thoughts to you. We're going to start with Dorian Finney-Smith and his impending player option. I have a little bit of information on what people around the league and those close to the Lakers are kind of anticipating. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Depending on how that plays out, him opting in, him opting out for a longer deal for more or for less money per years, but more overall money, or opting out and getting another deal somewhere else. That does impact some of what the Lakers might be able to do in free agency. So that might be worth kind of talking about as well. So we'll talk about Dorian Finney-Smith a little bit. And then today was reported and then announced that the Utah Jazz are going to be hiring Austin Ainge to be their president of basketball operations. Danny Ainge, his dad, Daddy Ainge, if you will. Nope, never calling him that again. Danny Ainge is the CEO there in Utah. And rather loudly, Justin Zanuck, I believe is the guy's name. He used to be their GM. He still is their GM. He was doing a fine job. Then they hired Danny Ainge, and who had what say over whom was a little ambiguous. And the there was some kind of wondering around the league, and then within the Utah Jazz's own fan base, like, who has final say here? And then it was made abundantly clear here today that Austin Ainge will have final say, which probably means that Danny now outranks Justin Zanuck as well. I think it's Justin. And now it's just a matter of, the Jazz being a fully Ainge run team. I saw on Twitter that a lot of people wanted to have a Bronny James conversation because Austin is now getting a job at an organization where his team, or where his dad is the CEO. He got his first opportunity with the Boston Celtics, probably because of who his dad was there. And people were comparing that type of movement to Bronny James getting the opportunities that he did last year. And I thought the conversation was at times forced, but also it's worth noting that the NBA, and like all professional sports, is a very nepotistic and cronyistic establishment. So we can talk about that too. And then finally, at Ainge's, this is I think more interesting to me, but you guys can tell me. At Ainge's introductory press conference, he was asked about tanking, and he said it's not. They're done with that. The question was framed around the fact that they did all of that tanking and fell in the lottery rankings, or the lottery order. And he said how, they're probably done with that, and it might be time to move on. That's something that I told you guys right after the lottery, was how smart organizations are going to say, wait, we're doing all of this losing. We're putting our fans through all of that for flattened odds. That doesn't make much sense. And that might help end tanking. So we'll talk about that at the final part of the show. And then obviously after that, if we get questions or comments, stuff like that, we will go ahead and answer some of those as well. So, semi-loaded show. We got stuff to talk about, which I will take on this fine Monday evening in early June when the Lakers have been done playing for a little while. But yeah, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share, and all the nice buttons. Like the nice buttons really help us. And then if you guys are listening to this or watching on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find the show there. If you guys are listening to the show in the morning in its podcast form, hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey, and tell your friends about the show because word of mouth really, really matters. All right, let's dive on in. We'll start with Dorian Finney-Smith, obviously, as this directly impacts the Lakers. So I did some, I've obviously, we're at the part of the season where you check in with people, you have conversations with people, and sometimes they have stuff, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you just catch up for the sake of staying on their radar so that it doesn't seem like you're calling whenever you need something and you actually have that kind of relationship. That's all the juggle. It's all part of the industry. So I've been doing a lot of that lately, is just kind of checking in, saying, hey, still here. And one of the conversations that I had today was about, and I was bugging Pete about this too. So sorry, Pete, but and Darius for that matter, the LFR guys maybe regret being my colleague now because I text them so much more. But anyway, I was kind of wondering if we might be having this conversation about freeing up free agency flexibility in the wrong way. And a lot of the focus to this point has been about LeBron potentially taking less for the sake of opening up the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Right now, the Lakers only have access to the taxpayer mid-level. If they want access to the full taxpayer mid-level, which is worth about almost triple of what the taxpayer mid-level is worth, the Lakers would have to cut significant salary to get down to that level. So I was kind of thinking, and a lot of times, like if we have this conversation, the way that it typically goes is first, people you talk to think it's unlikely LeBron takes less. Shams Charania, I think Jovan is on record with this too. Another fellow Odyssey colleague who I've been bugging a lot more recently. But the reports so far indicate that anticipation is LeBron is going to opt into his deal. And then, the Lakers will have to work with their books from there. If he does, without significant change to the roster, the Lakers just don't have very many avenues to dip under the tax threshold and thus have access to the full non-taxpayer mid-level exception. So that, if LeBron opts in, that talk is over. And for a lot of people, they believe that ends the Lakers' chances at winning a championship this year. I feel a little iffy talking about pay cuts with a guy who just got 6th in MVP voting and was a second-team All-NBA guy last year. I'd feel kind of icky. It'd be one thing if LeBron clearly took a step back and was nowhere near the player that he should be or that he would be, and that he just clearly isn't a max level player, but he is. Like what I just said right there would indicate he is a max level player. And if you're concerned that, further slippage might mean that maybe next year he gets 3rd team All NBA or he doesn't get one altogether, and now you're paying a non-max player max money, okay, but we have yet to really see that type of decline from LeBron. So it's one thing to be wary of it. It's another to anticipate it. And and basically ask LeBron to take less based on the chance that he takes another step back or that he takes a big step back. So anyway, a lot of this conversation about the LeBron pay cut thing, from my perspective, when I had conversations on this matter back last year, the way that I had that conversation was, hey, look, if he was willing, it wasn't like they leaked this anonymously. It wasn't some report that was second or third hand. No, this was Rich Paul, I believe, directly telling Shams Charania that yeah, we're down to take a little bit less if it means that we have a chance at getting James Harden to the Lakers, or Klay Thompson to the Lakers, or DeMar DeRozan to the Lakers, or hilariously Jonas Valanciunas. Again, one of the funniest rumors of my time covering the sport. But it'd be one thing. It'd be one thing if LeBron, and essentially it's easier for LeBron to look at taking a pay cut when you talk about those names. Klay Thompson's a future Hall of Famer. James Harden, future Hall of Famer. DeMar DeRozan, not really a Hall of Famer, but hugely popular among his peers, and also Jonas. But like the problem with extending that to this year, and I ran into this problem too, was there isn't anybody like that on the market. There aren't any future Hall of Famers that if LeBron takes less, the Lakers could potentially have access to. I've also heard from some people close to the Lakers who were like, it was a really good PR move. He floated, Rich Paul says that he might be willing to take a little bit less in a year where it just wasn't practical or really possible that the Lakers were going to need him to take a whole bunch less. And he winds up getting the positive PR and winds up taking basically all of his max anyway. Did take a bit of a haircut, which, given his hairline does really matter, but took a bit of a haircut so that the Lakers could dip below the second apron, but not that much. And now, we fast forward to where we are now, where people are like headed into the offseason thinking, oh yeah, this guy's going to take 20 million less. And I just never really saw where that came from. Now, what I was told back over the course of this last season was, hey, if he was willing to take less to bring another star to LA, his top priority right now is winning a championship with the Lakers, and specifically winning a championship with Bronny on the team as well. That would be something that you just will never see again, probably. And unless Bryce is eventually on the Lakers and he goes back to back or something, I don't know. But the thinking was, if he was willing to do that, then maybe if the Lakers get close enough to competing for a championship, or bring the roster close enough to competing for a championship, that maybe they could reopen those talks, and maybe he takes a little bit less or a lot of bit less, I don't know, to help get the Lakers over the hump and help win a championship. And there are people who still believe it's a possibility. I have it tucked away as a maybe, just maybe kind of a thing. But I think the way that the Lakers basically have to operate is with the assumption that he's just going to opt in, because, and then if he doesn't and he's willing to take less, cool, you have more flexibility that way. But if you basically bank on him doing that and you plan out your books with a budget that is not what it actually is, we've all overextended ourselves at various points in our lives, and that can be kind of painful. So I would still say LeBron opts in and you figure out the rest of the roster that way. If he doesn't opt in, if he opts out and is willing to take a little bit less and is just that big of a Nickeil Alexander-Walker fan, then cool. But I just don't think that kind of player, while he's a good one, isn't the kind of player LeBron envisions when he's like, yeah, I'll take 15, 20 million less to play with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I just don't see that happening that way. So we'll see. But anyway, you know what? Let's take a quick second here, and we'll come back to the Dorian part of this. So all of that said, I think that we are misplacing our faith in hoping that LeBron takes less. I don't quite see it. And I feel kind of gross asking him to take less given the season that he just had for the Lakers. But if, say, Dorian Finney-Smith opts out, one, he would do so because his agent has already done his homework and they have heard about another team that might be willing to pay Dorian 15-ish million bucks for the next couple of years, or 12 to 14 million bucks over the next, few years, 3 years, whatever it is. And if his agent finds that out and, Dorian opts out, on one hand, you would say, yeah, that would suck to lose Dorian after you traded a really valuable expiring contract last year, as well as a couple second rounders to get him. And thus, you basically, given that they didn't really do anything with him in the playoffs, that would be a bummer to lose those assets after a fairly disappointing run in the postseason. I also just didn't really like what I saw from Dorian in the postseason either. Um, uh, so on one hand, it would suck, but on the other hand, if Dorian opts out, he is on his player option next year is worth 15 and some change, which is basically the pay cut that a lot of people are kind of hoping LeBron takes. So if Dorian opts out, and I've done a little bit of math here, I bugged Darius about this too, and I bugged some other cat people. If Dorian opts out and the Lakers lose him, I've heard that Memphis really likes him. They thought they were trading for him at the deadline. But if he opts out and gets the full mid-level exception from somebody, or gets a decent 2 or 3 year offer from another team and walks, well, then that brings the Lakers mighty close, if not all the way to the opportunity to have the full mid-level exception at their disposal. And then you're talking about potentially Nickeil Alexander-Walker, though some people around the league think he might get a little bit more than that to go to like Orlando or something. If you open up your full mid-level, you can sign Bruce Brown and Clint Capella probably. You could sign Steven Adams with the full mid-level and take care of your rebounding and offensive rebounding going into next season. You could, you have options. So I guess the point of all of this is to say that it wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing if Dorian walks in terms of team planning. Now, the Lakers are going to try really hard to keep him, and I'll explain why here in a second. But just kind of store that in the back of your mind that if Dorian walks, they already have too many 4/5s, right? I saw the comment here. Lobo saying the Lakers have too many power forwards. J1 saying Dorian is a 4/5 now. Rain Tomorrow is saying at this point we have too many players who are at their best guarding 4s and 5s. Agreed completely. And essentially, the reason I started thinking about this is because I basically was like, one of Rui or Dorian has to go this year, because you're not going to lose LeBron, and you obviously don't want to lose Luka. And personally, I think I'd rather keep Rui. He's going to be the better player next year. Look up how old Dorian Finney-Smith is. He's a lot older than you think. And we've already seen that athleticism decline, where before he used to guard 3s and 4s. Now he has to guard 4 and 5s. So could be, I would probably say again, uh, good luck, Doe. Like, good luck, Dodo. Like, are you going to go the way of the Dodo? I guess my thing here is the Lakers have um additional flexibility. And by the way, if Dorian takes less and the Lakers then have full access to their mid-level exception, that's a scenario where it might behoove LeBron to take a little bit less for the sake of staying far enough under the tax level in the first apron and all that stuff. Um, if if now you go to LeBron and say, hey, we we, we let Doe walk, we're we did that so that you wouldn't feel pressure to take 15-20 million dollars less. Doe walked. All we really need is like a couple million here and there so that after we take care of the rest of the roster, we aren't right up against the hard cap we would be at, and we wouldn't be completely screwed if an injury happened, and we needed to sign a minimum contract or something like that. That I think is a lot more feasible and ask to LeBron than, hey man, we, you know, it seems like Dorian is going to opt in, and or Luka really wants us to keep Dorian. Do you mind just kind of making up for the fact that we need, we don't have very much flexibility? That's a tough call for LeBron, because again, it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker, it's Bruce Brown, it's an old Clint Capella, it's Steven Adams. It's not, well, I guess if we're, doing the Jonas Valanciunas thing, well, even there though, like he wanted Jonas and Clutch wanted Jonas so that Anthony Davis would play a little bit less five last season. So yeah, I think if Dorian takes a little bit less than LeBron, or sorry, if Dorian walks, then it becomes more on the table for LeBron to take a little bit less. If Dorian sticks around and you're asking LeBron to take a 10-figure hit, that is a big ask, and I just don't see that happening. Now, here's where, and I already see the comments. I promise I'm gonna hit on all of this stuff. And here's why I think a lot of that conversation, I'm not going to go so far as to call it moot, because it is possible that, Dorian has a bit of a market out there. What I'm told is that the likeliest scenario here is Dorian opts out and he signs a like 2-year, 24-25 million dollar contract with the Lakers, where right now the Lakers are on the hook for 15 and change. If Dorian opts out, he would net himself another 10 million bucks and a second year of that contract that he might not get elsewhere on the open market. And part of the reason for that is because the Lakers don't want to go to Luka and be like, hey, we let probably your best friend on this roster walk for the sake of a chance at Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who might wind up making more than we can pay him anyway. That's a tough ask as you're trying to get Luka to sign the dotted line. So essentially what I'm told is that like the Lakers aren't exactly in the business of even potentially pissing off Luka. So Dorian is probably sticking around one way or another. But I guess the point of all of that exercise is it was kind of to show one potential way that the Lakers could get a little bit more free agency flexibility, or flexibility in free agency. And also to kind of list a couple of paths they could take down that road. So you could kind of ask yourself, would you rather have Dorian Finney-Smith and the happy Luka, or maybe Nickeil Alexander-Walker, maybe Bruce Brown and Clint Capella, maybe Steven Adams? Like, what would you rather have there? I think I would probably prefer Brown and Capella or Steven Adams, or if by some miracle Alexander Walker is an option there. I think that's what I would rather have, those guys over Dorian. But as people are kind of talking about here, you can't risk pissing off Luka before you're trying to get him to sign a long-term extension. All right. We'll go ahead and go into everybody's favorite topic, especially when I talk about it. Nepotism and Bronny in the NBA and the Lakers, which are officially sponsored by Nepotism. So again, backstory. Austin Ainge has been with the Boston Celtics organization for the last few years, and based on the reporters who cover that team after Austin got his gig with Utah, has been a valuable member of the Boston of the Celtics organization. So like, I don't think this is a matter of a fail son who nobody else wants, right? And so he gets this gig in Utah, and immediately people jump to. I made the joke about it too, because the joke is standing right there. But immediately people jump to, see, where's the same energy for Bronny? And it's like, okay, all right. I can only speak for myself, but the nepotism of the Bronny move never bothered me all that much. It didn't. Like, go through the Thanasis Antetokounmpo was on the Bucks roster for a while. J.R. Smith's brother was on a team. Obi Toppin's brother was on the New York Knicks, I think, for a little while. You can go through the years and you can find plenty of examples of brothers and cousins and whatever getting opportunities that they would not otherwise get as player, or because of their relative who is a player on that team. Now let's expand it even further and look around at all of these front offices, especially the one that we're covering on the Lakers Lounge, and it's a whole bunch of nepotism. It's a whole bunch of cronyism. So if anybody was like, "Oh, this is terrible. Nepotism is the worst," just specifically about Bronny, they were kind of telling them on themselves. My thing is, I don't like nepotism in general. I think it's one of the things that is holding back society. We have these companies that have been built by these great people, and it gets handed off to these kids who may not be as passionate, let alone as skilled often as the people who handed them those companies, and that company tanks. Sometimes it goes better, sometimes it stays the same, whatever. So I don't love nepotism in general, but I'm not gonna isolate Bronny as this awful example of nepotism that a lot of people were, because it's impossible to just talk about LeBron James honestly for a lot of people in media. The SEO is too good, and if you go viral talking about LeBron James, you're going to go viral talking about LeBron James. So I'm not going to like draw some stupid line in the sand about Bronny. That's not what I was ever doing. I'm not. What I didn't love is us being told while we were getting pissed on, because it was a nepotism hire. We could say it. But while that was going on, we were being told, no, how dare you? How dare you question us for, how dare you question Bronny and how hard he works? Did I mention he's a really good kid? You're insulting a really good kid. And that's essentially like 4 JJ Redick press conferences where him yelling at us about how great a kid Bronny is. And he is. He's probably a good kid. I don't know. I've never spoken to him. Raj seems to like him. So I didn't like that I felt like we had to celebrate the nepotism. And I saw that take out there where it's like, actually, minority nepotism is good. And it's like, no, it's not. Because if minorities step into positions and just carry out the same ill-fated practices that the majority is carried out for however long, now we're not actually making any progress. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right? The who line. And it's really not that deep, but it's a matter of it was always a matter of, like, the opening night when Bronny was playing there and they flew in the Griffies for the moment. And it was like, yeah, Bronny's going to get out there and play because he earned it. And it's like, did he? Or did LeBron earn the photo op? Because that's all it was. And we can call it for what it was. We hardly saw Bronny again. And honestly, I thought it was good after that night. After all of that, I actually thought the Lakers, LeBron, Bronny, they all handled it really well after that. Bronny got to focus on his development and did develop over the course of the season with the G League. The player that we saw at the end of the year was a very different player than we saw at the beginning of the year. And I would hope that he gets another development year next year. We'll see how that goes. But I just didn't love the pomp and circumstance to something that we knew was pomp and circumstance. And they were trying to tell us that it wasn't pomp and circumstance. That's all it was. And so, we arrive here with Austin Ainge, who got his first opportunity with the Celtics, probably in large part because of who his dad is. Just like a lot of, dad's kids or sometimes mom's kids get opportunities, in organizations because of who their mom or dad or brother or sister or uncle or cousin or hamster's babysitter might be, whatever it might be. That happens all the time in the NBA and in professional sports. I remember, I laughed out loud at the notion of Bill Belichick's son being this like up and coming defensive mind. And it's like, based on what, man? That guy just chews pencils. I haven't seen that guy make any kind of noteworthy steps forward in the evolution of defending in the NFL. He's just Belichick's son. So yeah, I don't love nepotism. I'm never going to love nepotism. And to the people who were like, yeah, well, you have this show and eventually you're going to hand it off to your kids. I literally have them pictured behind me. And the last voice that you hear on every one of these episodes is Avery. But if they take an interest in this stuff, I'm going to make them go through all of the proper steps. And if they earn themselves an opportunity elsewhere and it just so happens that it's a fit here, okay. But I'm not just going to it has taken years, blood, sweat, and tears to build it to even to this point, let alone by the time the kids are old enough to potentially take over. I'm not just going to hand it over and let them ruin it if that's all they're going to do. So, yeah, to the people who say that makes me a bad dad, you're probably not a very good parent, or you weren't one at all. But the notion that we should just hand stuff over to the kids for the sake of handing it over to the kids, no, earn it. And then if you get it by way of earning it, then cool. You're probably going to be much better at the job because you went through those steps. Just by the way, Bronny is probably going to be a lot better next year and better positioned for next year because he went through a full year of development in the G League. He went through the proper steps. And if he gets an opportunity next year or the year after that, after focusing on his development, he'll be a much better player and be more ready for those opportunities than he would have if the Lakers basically said, yeah, we know you're not really ready for this moment right now, but you're going to play and you're going to play a lot just because LeBron said so. All of these guys from LeBron, Bronny, and the Lakers handled it, I thought, really well after opening night and through the rest of the season. And we'll see how well they handle it here moving forward. Bronny apparently is going to play in summer league. So we'll see what steps forward he takes there. But like, I just didn't quite see the comparison here because Austin, and again, maybe he rose through the ranks simply because of who his dad is, but enough people who know stuff vouched for Ainge or Austin as a front office mind. And the Celtics were apparently upset to see him go, which isn't quite how the Lakers felt about Ryan West when he stepped away. So, like, I would say I think Austin Ainge is probably a little bit better at this than the average Nepo kid, but it's I do think our ears should always perk up when we hear a familiar last name. And I think our ears, it's good to be skeptical, and I think it's good to be a little cynical about these things, because that opportunity that goes to somebody who didn't necessarily earn it, because of whatever their last name is. That opportunity is being held from somebody who could have earned or did earn that opportunity, and maybe would have been better at, and probably would have been better at that opportunity than the person who didn't earn it and isn't willing to work to become the best they would be at that opportunity, given that opportunity. So in general, I don't quite see this as an apples to apples case here. What I will say is that I'm happy to see and say that Bronny took real steps forward next year. And if it doesn't work, if Austin Ainge sucks, cool. That means the Utah Jazz sucks. So that's what we should be maybe rooting for. Now, Ainge did make a little bit of news, especially in Utah, because he was asked a direct question about tanking and about the practice of tanking, especially because they tanked the way that they did last year. So Utah did this thing, and we saw it actually from a few teams last year, where they didn't tank the beginning of games. They actually tanked the end of games. And you had guys, get minutes in the first, second, and third quarters. And then wouldn't you know it, their best players didn't play in the fourth quarter, and especially not in clutch moments, as the objective was to lose. And I was happy to see that teams that did that, weren't rewarded with higher picks. I don't think you should benefit from losing in professional sports. I don't like that precedent. As it was being set. Now, this this show, and my career started with the Team Tank podcast. At the time, it made sense to tank because the Lakers had to keep their top 3 picks, and it was a an unavoidable evil that you basically just had to grit your teeth and bear. But I'm happy that they flattened the odds now to the point where it doesn't make as much sense to do that. So the he gets asked about it, and he says in his press conference, they were asking about trying to manipulate the outcomes of these games for the sake of better draft lottery odds. He says you aren't going to see that next year. Now, to what extent, and if it's posturing, and maybe he's just like all these other executives, a really good liar, but it's at least worth acknowledging the possibility that because of these flattened odds, at least one team in the Utah Jazz tanked to the extent where they had the best odds in the lottery, didn't get the top pick, and weren't awarded Cooper Flag, after doing everything fairly shamelessly to lose as often as they could. They might be looking in the mirror and recognizing that that isn't a viable path to team building anymore. And I think that would be a good thing. It would be if the NBA did something, and that being flattening the odds here, that would lead to less tanking. That's a big win for players, for coaches, for fans, for all of us. The only people who don't really benefit are the dweebs who stepped into a sport and were like, actually, we should maybe just lose as often as we possibly should. No, like all of those people, like, go away, get out of the sport. If your inclination, if your grand evolution to the sport, your addition to the sport is losing on purpose, I don't want the Sam Hinkies in the sport anymore. I really want to see what Sam Presti does now that seems to be a less viable path forward. Um, and I want to see what a lot of these Moneyball organizations do, especially in years where you do have a Cooper Flag available, or you did have a Victor Wembanyama available previously. I want those teams that have decided that it's in their best interest to lose as often as they possibly can, and then do so over multiple years. I want those teams to go the way of the dodo. That approach needs to go. And if flattening odds helped that, great. Great job, Adam Silver. You don't hear that from me very often. All right, let's go ahead and go through some of the comments here. I didn't hold on, Jordan. You misheard me. I never said that Bronny didn't put in the blood, sweat, and tears. I said that my kids aren't just going to get access to this show, which I put blood, sweat, and tears into, to just get this show whenever I decide to hang up my microphone. I'm not saying that Bronny didn't put in the work to get to where he did. He did put in work, and the fact that he did rebound from an actual heart attack is really exemplary. I just don't, it would have been a bummer. Like, I remember when Michael Jordan's career was kind of winding down, and Marcus Jordan they were really trying to force Marcus Jordan on us, and he just wasn't very good. And had Michael Jordan still been playing, and Marcus Jordan would have gotten a gig, and they would have tried to tell us, and by the way, again, I'm not saying that like what made Bronny unique here was the nepotism. That's not it. What made the whole situation unique was this weird movement to like tell people you don't get the sport, or you're less of a fan if you don't celebrate the nepotism. That never squared with me. So, but like with Marcus Jordan, had he made it to the pros and had he tried to play for the Bulls or the Wizards or something like that, it would have gone extremely poorly. He was not the kind of player, even Bronny was, even given the heart attack. My thing here with Bronny, and I was happy to see it happen over the course of the year. I said it after that first game. It was like, good, we got that out of the way. Let Bronny grow. Let Bronny develop. And guess what happened? The Lakers did. We, for the most part, did. I know on my show, it was a concerted effort. I said, we're not talking about him unless we have a reason to talk about him. And we mostly ignored him. He developed. And by the end of the season, he was a better player. I still don't necessarily see him helping the Lakers next year. I think his shot would have to take a gigantic leap forward, and his motor defensively would have to really improve. But I see a path where, like, maybe eventually he helps out here and there. He could be one of those, two-way type players who by the end of the season, does like the Jordan Goodwin thing. Maybe I could maybe see that. But I'm not going to start the season. I saw there was a report that the Lakers are anticipating that he's going to be helping them next year. I don't see that. I don't think that is going to be something that the Lakers are under a ton of pressure to make happen. And if we do feel that pressure, and if LeBron does apply that pressure, I'm going to call it out, because if Bronny isn't ready for it and he gets that opportunity while he isn't quite ready for it, then that's something that we have to kind of talk about. But no, I would never say that Bronny didn't put in the work. I would never, ever, ever say that. That would be offensive. All right. That is, I think, going to do it. Yeah, I think that'll be that's good enough here for this episode of The Lounge. So the plan this week is to, maybe knock out a couple of reviews. I have a couple of guests potentially lined up for the rest of the week as we get ready for the finals and all that stuff too. So until then, and until the next time you guys hear from us, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.